Welcome back. You've now viewed several videos that talk about the idea of having your students work in groups and teams, taking a variety of different perspectives, sharing a variety of different strategies. How do you do it? How do you assess it? And so on and so forth. I've been having my students work collaboratively in groups and teams for 20, 25 years, something like that. And over that time, I've observed a lot of things with regard to how they do their work and how it works or does not work for them. And I want to share some of those observations with you that you may not find necessarily showing up in other kinds of resources. So I'm calling this video, Walt's Practical Thoughts on Students Working in Groups and Teams. So these are things, comments, suggestions, thoughts, observations to help you more successfully engage your students in working groups and teams. And I've constructed these in such a way that they're things that you might share with your students, things to help your students better understand how to successfully work in groups and teams. Okay, before I do that though, I need to kind of put in a word for the value of having your students do their group work in class time. All right, so the value of that is there's a whole range of things. One is that you're there. You're a resource. You can kind of oversee things. You can answer questions right on the spot, and you can make sure that they are staying on task and make sure they don't somehow veer off, maybe going in the wrong direction in terms of their efforts, their inquiry, and so on. The other advantage to that is they're signed up for your module at that time, in that place, and they're supposed to be there. Whereas if they try to do a lot of their group work outside of the class time, then they have to worry about, their schedules, some of them work, et cetera, how do they all get together and do an effective, make an effective effort in terms of their working on their project. So it's really, really valuable if you can carve out time within the class time for them to work in class. Of course, this is the question you're going to ask, is where do I find the time to do this? And the answer is, if you recall back from earlier videos, overview, pedagogical training 1.0 and so on, this is the idea, the big idea. And that is defining what is the really big idea of your module in the context of your field, and then how does that pertain to your module? What are the things that are involved in providing the enduring understanding of that big idea? And what is also really important to know, everything else, get rid of it. Only worth being familiar with, that's the stuff that you get rid of. And you use that time that you've gained by getting rid of all this other stuff to really hammer on this. And again, remember, what you're doing is you're having your students do collaborative learning about this. That's what they're doing. All right, it's not separate, it's how they're learning about this. And so you're incorporating all these ideas that we've given you in terms of student-centered learning, groups and teams, et cetera, and using that to enhance their learning of the big idea, enduring understanding, what's important to know. You've gotten rid of this, and that's how you gain your time for in-class time. Okay, so these are some of the things that I've observed over the years in working with students, and I literally tell them these things at the beginning of a semester because they may seem obvious to you. I hope they seem obvious to you, but not necessarily to our students. So students, how can you be successful in working in your groups? Show up each time. If there's a meeting, class time, show up, be there. It doesn't take very many misses of those coming to those meetings before the rest of the group members start saying, oh, that person's not engaged. They're not really buying into this. They're not interested. And that starts lowering the view of that student that's been missing in their eyes. Come prepared with something. All right, this may be doing a reading, it may be whatever the case may be. Make sure you come prepared with something other than just walking in cold and you've got nothing to say, you've got nothing to prepare. Speak up, say something each time. Some of these things are especially valuable for helping introverted students, shy students who maybe aren't as comfortable or as confident about their ideas as some other students are. These are ways to kind of get around that and help them understand how do I speak up. So speak up each time. Say something. Ask a question each and every time. So don't sit there quietly during half the meetings because the other students, again, are going to think that you're not interested. Listen carefully to your group members. Don't just talk, listen. And always, of course, to us, this is a very obvious one, always be respectful of your group members and their ideas and their perspectives. Take ownership of your own perspectives, comments, etc. Again, this often happens with students who are maybe not confident. They have an idea, but they're not completely confident in sharing that idea with the rest of the group. They need to go that extra step and say, okay, I'm going to say this. I have an idea. I'm going to share something. Maybe it's not the best idea. That's okay. But at least I'm sharing. I'm contributing to the conversation. I'm contributing to the discussion. Have students jot down notes about the discussions, not just the answers. It's a tendency for students to say, okay, we have a task and we're going to, at the end, we're going to write all this down. That's the answer part right there. Well, again, remember, a lot of this has to do with the learning process. So what's going on in those discussions? Just a few phrases, a couple sentences each time can be very valuable. For an individual, it's also good as a record for future meetings of the group. Have them reflect on what you were learning from the discussions. So don't just, okay, talk, and then walk away. Kind of spend a few minutes thinking about, well, what did we accomplish and where are we going with this project? And then clearly communicate with other members outside of class time. Very first thing that students should be doing when they initially get into their groups is sharing how are they going to communicate. Texting, WhatsApp, email, whatever the case may be, make sure they have that communication set up. Again, some things that we understand, but students we need to reinforce for our students. You cannot succeed unless your group members succeed and vice versa. Your group product should be superior to the sum of the individual contributions. It's not at all unusual, especially when you say doing a project where they're writing a report. And what they'll do is they'll look at the total topic and they'll say, okay, well, there's 4 of us, we can divide this topic into 4 subtopics, we'll go our separate ways, write our reports, come back at the last minute and literally copy and paste those into some order and then turn that in as the project. You as the instructor need to somehow figure out how to make them understand that that's simply 4 separate projects. That's not the main project, the overall project. Again, how do you get them to understand that they need to integrate those together, they need to pull it all together, not just copy and paste it together, so that the product, the ultimate product of the group is superior to the sum of the individual contributions. That's not always an easy thing to do, but it's certainly something that you need to give some thought to and some energy to in terms of helping your students understand how to do that. Okay, most importantly, and very frankly, this is the thing to remember, the one key thing, if I had to pick anything that I've observed, this is the key thing in getting students to work effectively in groups in your classroom. Have them sit in a circle. Sit in a circle. Sit in a circle. Tell them that. Be sure that you as a student can directly see the face of each of your group members. If you have to get up and turn around, move your chairs around, do it. This is really important. And do it at the start, the first time you meet, and every time you meet. So let me explain this. So here we have a set of students sitting in a row. Very typical sitting in a row. All right? What happens? And this is a linear, this is not a circle. These two will be talking. Talk, 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 talk. This one is perhaps kind of hearing what's going on and maybe once in a while can interject, but it's really not that great part of the discussion. And this poor person over here is just can't hear, is not in a position to contribute. So what's going to happen, and I can tell you this happens very fast. These two people start to think that, oh, we're doing all the work. This person's not interested. They're not engaged. They're not contributing. This person, on the other hand, is sitting there saying to themselves, oh, those guys, they don't want me to be involved. They're not allowing me to contribute. A lot of bad dynamics start to set up that way. So a simple fact of having them sit in a circle where they can face each other starts to eliminate that dynamic that I just showed you. And they're facing each other. They can look directly at each other. Now, sometimes this is difficult to do. Sometimes you have situations in your classroom in which the benches are bolted down. This is the room I used to teach in for many years. All right, you notice that the benches are bolted, the chairs are movable, there's the front of the room there, there's the screen, and so on and so forth. So what I discovered over time was, again, getting back to this idea of setting a circle, the natural thing that students would do when they form a group is they just sit in a linear array like that, and they just doing exactly what I was saying a moment ago. They physically have to get up, move their chairs. This is the same classroom from a different angle. Actually, that last picture I would have been standing back over here in the corner shooting the picture. Here's a group of students, 5 students. There's at least 3 of them engaged directly in doing the activity. The other 2 are clearly engaged because you can see they're looking in, they're contributing. There's a group back here. There's 1, 2, 3. They're sitting on this side, but then this young lady right here has turned her chair around, and now they are sitting as best they can in a circle. This group here is kind of sitting in a horseshoe. There's a group over here where they've gone to the end. So they've gone to the end of the benches for the most part, and sat in a circle. But I won't say I force them to do it, but I say sit in a circle, move your chairs, do it. And I tell them that each time until they're trained enough that they automatically do that. And they start to recognize how important that is, this idea of sitting in a circle. So sitting in a circle is really critical, and it's something, depending upon your classroom setup, that you may have to put a little thought into how do they actually do that. Okay, so again, this idea of student-centered learning, that you have the instructor, students are working collaboratively in these groups and teams, and what are the students doing? Again, this idea that what are the students doing? They're solving problems, working on case studies, doing concept maps, working on projects, working on classroom assessment techniques, whatever activities. What are you doing? You're listening, you're walking around the room, you're listening, you're answering questions. You know, again, you go from here, go over there, listen to them for a few minutes or seconds, you go over here, and just kind of keep rotating around the room. And again, people will have questions, clarification questions, and so on, answering questions, acting as a resource. So a lot of times what I find, especially if they have a fairly sophisticated project, is I don't want them to find resources initially that might lead them in the wrong direction that I don't want them to go in. And so I might say, well, you know, have you considered this part of this? And maybe help them out. Again, acting as a resource, keeping them on track, making sure that they are progressing as they should, and then timekeeping. So if you have a 20-minute activity, you call it 20 minutes. Again, you're the timekeeper for what's going on in that room, and remind you as soon as they get in their groups and start doing things, they're talking, they're discussing, the noise level of the room goes up. That's a good thing. Normally when we're lecturing, we like to have things quiet, people paying attention to us. This is the reverse. We want them talking, which means the noise level goes up, and that's a very good thing. So again, we act as a facilitator of the learning process, getting us right back to this idea of student-centered learning, as we want all of us to keep moving in this direction for student-centered learning. This is what we're really talking about, a learning environment that I just showed you a moment ago. Our role has changed, and we are now a facilitator of learning. So those are some thoughts in terms of my own observations in terms of students working in groups and teams, and use them or not. It's entirely up to you. Okay, what I'd like to do here is to share something kind of an aside. It's again a mechanism that I've found for having students present things in the classroom without having to use PowerPoint and sophisticated technology and so on. And it's literally giving them pieces of paper and maybe markers and having them draw. And so this is a situation where we had some case studies about a disease in cows. And I asked them to specifically draw images that will explain or help the rest of the class visualize certain aspects of that case. You know, what was the basic complaint of the in this case, the dairy producer? What were the risk factors causing in terms of the disease? What was the potential pathogen causing the disease? What were the recommendations, et cetera? So there are like 4 or 5 subcomponents of each case that they were supposed to address in their drawings. They drew them, they talked about them, they went through the case, they tried to understand how do we express to the rest of the class in a drawing what we thought was going on with regard to that component of that case. And then what we did is we literally just tape them up on the wall and then have someone from each group come up and say, okay, you know, group number 7, if this happens to be group number 7, I'm not sure which number that is, you know, can you explain what the risk factors are? And so a young lady here might be talking about, well, this image shows the risk factors, and these are the risk factors for this particular farm, for this particular disease. So that's what I call a mosaic. So again, the idea of a mosaic is you have individual pieces that put together show a bigger picture. And that's really what we're doing here. So I offer this to you as a different way of having students present, and it's a fairly low-tech way. You don't need a lot of computer technology and all those kinds of things, and again, I know this may be limited for many of you. So paper, pencil, or markers, have them draw, maybe some tape, have them tape it up on the walls, and then the key is to make sure that the students will come up and explain to the rest of the class whatever they're expected to explain. Good luck.